Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, March 14th, 2021. Had a mind blank there, almost forgot the date for a second. Today we're going to be talking about President Trump's campaign potentially in 2024, and it seems to be very clear at this point in time that Donald Trump is the front runner for the 2024 Republican presidential primary. This is due to the fact that he's had a lot of support that has not really dwindled amongst the GOP. In fact, has increased from January 2020. So looking at this possibility of President Trump being the Republican nominee yet again on the ballot for a third time, we also need to raise the possibility that he chooses a different vice presidential candidate besides Mike Pence. In this list, we will go through 5 potential candidates, I believe, looking at the just the overall list and just analyzing what this would mean for Donald Trump's, I guess you could call it a re-election bid, but pretty much, we are just going to be looking at the potential VP candidates and what they would offer or not offer in terms of balancing out a Donald Trump ticket. Now, if you remember back in 2016, they did the speculation about Donald Trump running for president and who his VP would be. The speculation was very early. As he became the front runner, we started to see more and more discussion about it, and it seemed as some of his top choices were people like Chris Christie, or potentially even Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, people that he may have attacked in the primary, but people that were going to counteract the more extreme part of the Republican Party that is labeled under President Trump. President Trump was definitely the more outspoken candidate, whereas Mike Pence, as the eventual VP pick, was the more reserved and more calm and collected VP choice. But Mike Pence was on the losing ticket in 2020, and it doesn't look like Donald Trump is going to want to repeat the 2020 election. In fact, if you remember back in 2016, in the Republican primary, Mike Pence voted for Ted Cruz. So just want to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, he still ended up choosing Mike Pence as the VP spot, but it doesn't look as if that's going to be his number one pick entering into 2024. But that still means he's on the list, because if he does want to have a complete rerun, well, we could see Mike Pence return to being on this list. Now, at number 5, according to this list, is former Vice President Mike Pence. This is probably not going to be the likeliest outcome when we're looking at the overall chances for Donald Trump's presidency in 2024. The thing is, Mike Pence completely, I would say, as we would put it, cut off Donald Trump following the Capitol insurrection. Those chants of hang Mike Pence definitely did not go on easy ears when Mike Pence heard them in the Capitol. When we saw that footage being released actually during the House impeachment trial, or the Senate impeachment trial, we saw that Mike Pence was actually directed away from where he was out of fear that he would be harmed by the Trump supporters. Think about that. The people who had flown flags that said Trump Pence and voted on the same ballot where Mike Pence was right there on the VP ticket were saying to hang him, were saying that he should be killed. While I understand, that may not be a representation of all Trump supporters, the fact remains every single person that was in attendance, almost every single person, we're talking 99%, the 1% were reporters, were Trump supporters. And they voted for Trump. They voted for Trump and Mike Pence. But because of this baseless claims of election fraud, they thought Mike Pence was in on it. They thought that everyone was against Trump, every single person in the government. As much as, in a realistic sense, that simply isn't true. I know plenty of Republicans who have completely disavowed this idea that the election was rigged. Even Mike Pence came to a point where, while he was sort of encouraging it, he knew he could do nothing. He had no power electorally. There was nothing in the Constitution that gave him power. Even if he wanted to throw out certifications, it was not up to him. It was up to Congress, and both chambers had to agree. The Republicans held the Senate. They only got single digits in terms of the votes to throw them out, but they certainly did not have the House. So it just wasn't realistic, wasn't at all. So Mike Pence probably wouldn't be the best choice. I think that it would just be a return to the 2016-2020 ticket, and I don't think that would be a winning ticket for Donald Trump. He needs a new name if he is to be the nominee. At number 4, we actually have a very interesting name, Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is interesting. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene would be the best choice at all. I think she would be amongst the worst choices that we could see as a potential VP choice for Donald Trump. But she certainly has embraced President Trump in a full-on way, going so far as even groping a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump. I don't suggest Googling it. I didn't want to see it. I only saw it because I was scrolling through Twitter. I regret seeing it. I wish I never did. But I think that goes to show that Marjorie Taylor Greene was, to put it lightly, obsessed with President Trump. I think that she was just a very extreme supporter to a point where she was just overall completely following him to a T. And not to say that there aren't people in Congress that don't do that already, but that was her entire campaign. it's coincidental that she's wearing a Kelly Loeffler sticker because that's the same type of campaign that Kelly Loeffler ran as well, sending out ads about a 100% Trump voting record, being pro-Trump from the beginning, and Marjorie Taylor Greene definitely added to that. Now, if Donald Trump is looking for a yes man or yes woman, absolutely. Marjorie Taylor Greene probably would be the best pick for this instance, but I don't think that she would offer any type of electoral advantage, and looking at Georgia's result in 2020, we could possibly see Donald Trump lose the state by 6-7 points if Marjorie Taylor Greene is the nominee. She is one of the more extreme Republicans from Georgia. The only reason why she's in Congress is because she is from a safe Republican district. The voters here, overall in the entire state do not like her. When you look at the approval rating, though many people don't know who she is, of those who do, they do not like who she is and what she represents. She's a very extreme conservative beyond even the more extreme walks of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. And I think that while some people do want to compare her to AOC, I don't think the comparison is fair at all. Marjorie Taylor Greene has said many things. She has questioned the existence of 9/11. She has questioned whether or not the Parkland school shooting was real. I mean, we're talking about someone who's arguing for free healthcare versus questioning the existence of the Parkland shooting and saying that this was used to get rid of the Second Amendment, that a school shooting that killed high school students was meant for political purposes. I mean, honestly, it is kind of unfortunate to see that a politician who's in such a respected office is saying such things. And I think that it's a universal feeling of such dislikeness for Marjorie Taylor Greene, at least what I've seen amongst Republicans and Democrats. And I think that I don't think she would be a good choice at all. I think she would be one of the worst picks, possibly in history, beyond any type of pick in modern history at least. So I would definitely not say Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think if Trump wants a yes woman, maybe, but probably not. Then we go into the governors. I think the first one that you see draws your eye towards Christine Noem. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly now. The reason for that is because you might recognize her. You might recognize her because she speaks at certain events. She is rarely ever in South Dakota, which is her home state. She serves as governor here, and to be honest with you, she did not win the state by a lot. Let's take a look at how South Dakota voted in 2020. Donald Trump won the state with 62% of the vote to 36%. 62 to 36. This is just a complete obliteration for Joe Biden in this state. But Kristi Noem, she was able to win in South Dakota by single digits. She won by 3 points in 2018. 3 points, versus nearly 30. We're talking about 25-26 here versus 3. She wasn't a very good candidate in 2018. And she isn't too popular now. 1 in 15 out of every South Dakota resident has tested positive for COVID-19. That means they've acquired a test and tested positive. That's not this is an estimation of how many people in the state. No. This is the worst state in the United States for COVID-19. But it's still a Republican state, so her approval rating isn't taking as much of a dip as you might expect. But she's being floated not only as a name for VP, but also as a name for a presidential nomination. On top of that, Ron DeSantis from Florida. Ron DeSantis looks like he's on a pathway to re-election, potentially by double digits. He is a popular governor, and even during COVID-19, he has remained his popularity not nearly as high as it was before. We're talking about a low 60s dropping down to a mid 50s, but it's still a high approval rating, and it seems as if he's favored over the top two names, Nikki Fried and Charlie Crist in the state of Florida. So Ron DeSantis would offer that electoral advantage in the state of Florida, which is a state I expect to be decided by less than 3 points. If we put it in the GOP column, well, that's 31 electoral votes you can add to Donald Trump's column. But for Kristi Noem, I don't think she would offer any type of electoral advantage. I think that she is just someone who is being viewed as a smart woman, someone who is being applauded by members of the GOP. But realistically speaking, I mean, she didn't have any real electoral performances to her name that would say that she is an electoral juggernaut by any standard. In fact, she's one of the worst performing Republicans compared to the state's partisan composition that we've seen in the entire past decade. Looking down beyond Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis, it says that there is potentially, Greg Abbott or Henry McMaster, but probably not. If anyone, I would say Kristi Noem or Ron DeSantis. Then we have a list that says women and minorities. They said that President Trump's team is going to want to figure out how they can win back women voters and win over minority voters by even larger margins. Senator Tom Cruise of South Carolina and Tim Scott of South Carolina and Ted Cruz of Texas were floated as two options. Also, possibly Candace Owens. Remember, I made a video talking about Candace Owens as a potential running candidate in 2024. That was a way back when, I think even before the election potentially, or maybe right after. I don't remember. Time definitely seems a little bit weird amidst the pandemic. But, what would this mean? Well, essentially, this just seems to be pandering, to say the least. I don't think that Donald Trump's short list contained any minorities back in 2016. But looking at what it would do, it potentially could help. I think Kamala Harris being on the ticket in 2020 did help in a way. I think that she was able to solidify some of those black voters who thought that Joe Biden's history wasn't too good amongst the overall, at least younger black electorate. But on top of that, Kamala Harris's history wasn't anything even more defensible, I would say. I think that many people attacked her. And she got attacked by Tulsi Gabbard. She got attacked by many members of the left. Even after she had dropped out as the VP nomination, we saw some very outspoken people in the media, on social media, whatever it might be, at rallies, saying that they didn't like that Kamala Harris was the chosen one for this VP nom. But at the end of the day, I certainly think that she was able to help him, especially in an election where minority turnout was at nearly an all-time high. In terms of raw vote share, absolutely. But I think that percentage-wise, nearing what we saw previously, at least compared to the white electorate, and just looking at what that meant, well, it was enough that what we saw in Michigan, right down here in Wayne County, that Joe Biden was able to win this region. If you look at the shift from 2016, it actually shifted narrowly to the left, but that's not always the case when you look at some of these major cities, just because of the overall population. But it was made up for in other areas where we saw other cities where we saw white voters turn away from Donald Trump, and also some minority voters voting at a higher rate. So even then, the net gain was still larger enough to overcome. Even though the margin may have seemed closer, the net gain was enough for the Democrats to do better. If you look at Wisconsin, what do you notice in Milwaukee? Dane County, what we notice is that a lot of these votes here, a lot of them are from minority voters. A lot of them landed Joe Biden the election there. And then Philadelphia County, a huge county in Pennsylvania, very large minority population. So I think Kamala Harris helped in that aspect. I think that if Donald Trump is to choose a woman or choose a minority, I think he could receive a bump, I would say, a very small bump. I don't think it'd be as impactful as if it was on the Democratic side, just because the Democratic Party has had a strong history amongst both of these electorates. But he might try to make a play for that, considering that 2024 doesn't look too strong for him right now. And he might think the only way he can win is by winning over minority voters, or at least winning that by a larger margin than he did in 2020 and 2016. And then the final thing is actually a Trump family member. The consideration that President Trump could potentially choose one of his own running mates. It says here that President Trump flirted with the idea of selecting his daughter Ivanka as his running mate in 2016. It took Paul Manafort and then Trump's campaign chairman weeks to convince Trump that it would look bad to pick his own daughter to become the vice president if he won. And looking at what President Trump might be wanting to do here, rather than only winning in 2024, he might be trying to prop up his children, might be trying to prop up some of the top names in the Trump family. And I think that this is actually, in a way, smart, because it builds that legacy that was already started by President Trump in the real estate business industry through the presidency. And I think that if there was to be a Trump on the ticket with another Trump, either one of them is going to have to go into the political future at some point. And I think that Ivanka, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, some of them might be trying to make a play for certain Senate or House races in the future. And being on that ticket, or just being so close to President Trump, could really prop them up amongst the Republican primary. Donald Trump might enter into 2024 with no expectation to win, just because everyone's telling him right now, you simply are not going to win. But things can change. The American electorate is weird. We know this. We know the impossible has happened before, because Donald Trump wouldn't have been president without it. Looking at what has happened here, all of this consideration ahead of 2024, I find very fascinating, because, Donald Trump, after losing, people expected maybe would retreat, but it looks as if he's still going to be a very prominent figure within the GOP. And now we're already starting to analyze who could he choose. And I think this is also largely due to the fact that Donald Trump is now the front runner for the 2024 Republican primary. Had he said officially that he's not going to run, it looks as if it might have been Ron DeSantis or Ted Cruz or Mike Pence or Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump's name holds a lot of weight, specifically within the Republican Party. And at this point in time, he leads every single poll amongst Republican primary voters. So it's going to be very interesting what we see at the end of the day, but it looks as if Donald Trump is trying to make a potential play for 2024. I actually covered this today because I saw a tweet from one of Trump's closest allies saying that he's ready and fired up for 2024, and that he was looking presidential in the picture that she had posted. So the discussion is already there. And it looks as if his aides, that are as close to him as many other top names, I think that they could be saying, run for president in 2024, or they know something that hasn't been officially announced, sort of hinting towards 2024, like they say in the tweet, which could be an indicator that he actually is going to run. So ultimately it comes down, I think, in 2024, not only to Donald Trump's performance as a candidate, but who he chooses as vice president. I think that he shouldn't choose Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think he will choose Mike Pence, but the rest is entirely up to him and what he thinks is best for his re-election campaign. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.